Hello, my beautiful star family. I am so excited for this episode of Starseed Mission Support. I have with me a highly esteemed and beloved friend of mine, Rory Duff. You guys have been hearing about him and his work through so many of my videos over the years, and I'm so excited that we finally have him here for an episode here with us. And so, Rory, say hi to everyone.
Hi Z, hi everyone. Nice to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, so Rory is a geologist turned ley line researcher turned biogeologist. So I'd love for you to just share a little bit about how that began for you and what biogeology is, because it's kind of a new stream of science, but it's so beautiful.
Yeah, thank you. Some people use the word biogeologist, and I also use geobiologist. It's a bit similar in a way, but for me, it's the study of how life is affected by the Earth. So how the Earth affects life, and it's an absolutely correct science. There are degrees you can do in this, which is to do with how radiation, for instance, from the Earth affects life. What interests me is how the inner core and its ability to behave like a transduce vibrations out to the surface of the Earth, because we can measure these high pressure concentrations on the Earth in lines, high pressure lines, and they're all over the place, and they have different frequencies. And studying, making observations, and seeing where they intersect each other became fascinating when it was fairly obvious that the intersections were places where consciousness is affected in a different way. In fact, that different frequencies affect us all in different ways. So as a geologist, it was second nature to us to just map things. We spent our life mapping faults or mineralization zones and things like that. So it just thought, well, I thought, let's just try and map these lines and see what we've got. And it was a hobby, literally just that. I came across it initially in Africa, where I was working on the gold mines, and an Italian geologist was continually rung up by local farmers to come and look for water for them. And he roped me along one day and pulled out these dowsing rods from the back of his car. And I said, what on earth are you doing with those? And he said, oh, we know water's here, Rory. I just don't know where exactly, but these rods give us the precision. So there we go. We signed up, and we were there. We found water. Worked very nicely. And when I came back to this country, it was I came the work of a particular chap called Hamish Miller, and one of the main alignments runs from Cornwall all the way across England up to East Anglia. It's called the St. Michael alignment, and it has two energy lines, the Michael line and the Mary line. We were living down in Devon at the time, so it was very quick and simple to just see if I could dowse for those, which, yeah, it took an hour or so, but I managed to pick them up. And from then on, it was just curiosity, which is the trouble with all independent scientists. You get curious in things, and you ask questions like, why is that happening? And before you know it, you're on a completely different route and path. And I guess that's what you find. But going back to roots and paths in life and how you get where you are, one of the biggest things which struck me was synchronicity, which I'm sure people will have come across. Well, I was hit with a massive synchronicity in my 20s when two people on the same weekend who completely didn't know each other introduced me to the work of Rudolf Steiner. Had a moment of my life when I was burning the candle at both ends and really needed some grounding. And so it was a really important step. And one of the people had a whole library of Rudolf Steiner books, which was great because I immersed myself into his autobiography. And began to explore what this Steiner connection was. I didn't really grasp it at that point until I much later on in life, when I was constantly being reminded of Steiner's work, and then I came across Carl Jung's work, and he's the one that coined synchronicity, and how it really was something to do with the connection with inner spirituality, and the numinous, in his words, in trying to help direct you to find the path that you should be leading in life, the one you sort of signed up for before you came down here again. And when you look at life as a path where there's lots of synchronicity, and you just follow that and explore that, your life becomes so much more enriched, because you come across things at the right time. And if you look about what books you should do and what you should do in life, how do you know when is the right time? But synchronicity gives you that timing. It's just incredible. So yeah, I ended up doing geobiology and mapping energy lines, and realizing these things were linking both ancient and modern places of prayer. And the question was, well, why? Why is it that there are some places in the world that are more conducive to praying and meditating? Why do the Romans, why do the Christians, why do the pagans all use the same place over thousands of years? Why not just move a few hundred meters away? No, they would go back to the same place. And the reason being was that particular place was special. Well, there's nothing to do special in the geology particularly. But there were these intersections of these very low frequency vibrations. And that fascinated me. Why? Why on earth would that be the case? And that journey began to take me into the understanding of consciousness a bit more. It allowed me to meet a most amazing guy called Ron Pearson, who looked at the Big Bang Theory many years ago and realized, as an engineering physicist, that it was just a load of rubbish. I mean, there were mathematical faults on nearly all the lines of maths in the Big Bang Theory, and then the Guth's inflationary theory was just complete balderdash. And he came up with a new theory on the creation of the universe, which had the side effect of explaining how intelligence must have occurred on a subquantum level. And it kind of, everything fell into place when you start recognizing there is intelligence behind the universe, and there's a scientific background to this. And suddenly consciousness could be explained. You know, the human condition could be explained. All of these things that we're finding now have an explanation: empathy, telepathy, clairvoyance, prophecy. The thing that afflicted Jung. Jung thought he was going mad when he had visions of a huge world war 1 month before World War I. And he knew that when World War I broke out, that he'd prophesied this. And he struggled to come to terms with the fact that he could see the future. And this was like totally against his science. And he would say, you know, we should not know these things, you know, didn't have an explanation for it. But now we can understand how prophecy works with the new science, which anyway, I'm going on a bit, but the joy of curiosity and finding everything out. And then the bizarreness of it all is that you'll get drawn into thinking, well, okay, I need to start meditating on these sites as well and find out what it's all about. And then you find that the biggest block to your meditation is your own curiosity. So you begin to investigate, well, what's individual meditation all about? And it's about that sort of time we begin to realize that what Steiner was talking about, this is when he came back, it's all about these big cycles of where we move from group consciousness to individual consciousness and then back into group consciousness. And Steiner really got to grips with it in a way like nobody else ever managed to do. But he's basically pointed out that we're moving from the fifth epoch to the sixth epoch, and we're moving back to group consciousness from having been in individual consciousness. And that really required us to think about how we work in groups. And group meditation is so incredibly different from individual meditation. that then brought us back to Jung and his Red Book, and him talking to elementals. I'm just like, I can't believe I'm reading this. And then when I look at his Red Book images, there's just pictures of snakes and nodes and energy lines all over the place. I'm thinking, this is just nuts. And then you hear him having these conversations with elementals and then really real live beings, and you begin to think, this is not what we're taught about in school. With science doesn't explain this, but the new science of Pearson does. And so you start looking at the world in a completely different light, with fresh eyes even, as to what this means. And Jung was gifted these wonderful symbols by Ha, the elemental. And he would say that there's a very necessary ambiguity in symbolism. And when we get symbols today, there has many meanings to them. You just have to tap into the thread, the same thread of inspiration that came from the subconscious of the creative artist in the first place. You tap into that same thread and you get that same information and more. It's a gift that keeps giving. And when groups start working on any wonderful bits of ancient creativity, maybe works of art or music, it inspires them to come up with more connections with their subconscious mind, and more information just pours through. And it's happened to Jung. And this is how he started doing this. In fact, I think he was following Steiner's methodology, from starting with just inner visualization, and that just allowed his imagination to grow and grow until inspiration came through, and finally intuition and insights, and then glimpses of the future. And he'd opened up this whole new world, this inner world, which essentially is where his whole psychoanalytical movement began, because he found that he could now begin to understand the mind in ways that he could help people who had problems. Then he continued his journeys. He did that from 1913 to 1919, and where he wrote all these things up in his black books, and which later became the Red Book. But from that birthed this wonderful Jungian analysis movement. But then he realized he'd moved on from this, because he'd realized where this was all leading. And from being a formal sort of Orthodox Christian, he became much more of a sort of Gnostic, inner spiritual person who had really tapped into the reality of life, that the most important thing wasn't the life we're leading here so much as the inner life that we're supposed to lead. But Ha had been gifting him information in order to spill his curiosity over to study alchemy and symbolism. And so we learn a lot about symbolism from Jung. And that's now allowed us to look at the symbols we find in prophecies around the world. I call them the universal prophecies, because they're talking about the same cyclic event that Steiner's talking about, the return to group consciousness, and what that means. And the prophecies give us different angles about that same event. Even the legends give us discussions on what happened when we left group consciousness. There's some classic legends in the Chaldean account of creation, for instance, talks about how mankind passed through the abyss into this world. And we're now going back through this abyss, which is going to challenge us in order to make us become better people, in order to go back to group consciousness. So we have this transformation right now happening, and we need to prepare for it. And we need to do it in groups. And Steiner says we have to learn how to cross the abyss, because when people do this individually, like Jung, who went on an individual shamanic journey himself, he crossed the abyss, and he got really challenged by the characters he met there, and his version of reality was just overturned. And that's exactly what the Quero talk about, the overturning of the perception of reality at these Pachacuti moments. But we're collectively going through this, and that is in many ways like an awakening, but it's not an individual one, it's a collective awakening, which is coming back to why we're here, because I think your work and your ideas for the Emerald Awakening in Ireland coming up is so important, because it's going to really make a difference to to the whole country. And the more people that come along and recognize the sort of the synergy that can be had when people come together in groups and meditate on these sacred sites, just as the legends talk about, just as Steiner talks about, it is incredible. In fact, I found a book about 35 years ago now, written. It was about Steiner's lectures in the last 2 years of his life, and it was the lectures that he gave up in a tiny little town in North Wales. And you think of Steiner as being sort of European sort of chap, but here he was in a tiny little town in north of Wales, and he was given 13 talks on the evolution of consciousness. And this was in 1923, so it's just over 100 years ago. And in that book, he started linking up with earth energies and his work. And every day he'd walk up the hills behind the town of Penmaen Moor, and up in the hills there were these druid circles, these 4 stone circles. He'd walk amongst them. He would feel the aura and the energies of these places, and he would talk about it in his lectures in the evening to this group of people out there. And what we learn from his thoughts on the evolution of consciousness and these special sites, and he knew the earth and the earth's aura was strong in certain places. And he said this is where your imagination is enriched more than anything else. And of course, it's that connection between the conscious and subconscious, which builds a bridge between that. And that kind of shocked me when I first found out that, because this is what dowsing was all about. Dowsing for water and dowsing for energy alliances. You ask the question in your conscious mind, focused, really focused, and then you switch into awareness, totally forget yourself, forget your focus, and you move into that subconscious mind. And there's a whole lot of things I can tell you how to do that, the pitfalls. I mean, Steiner talks about overcoming the 3 beasts and needing the 3 fires. Well, we'll talk about that probably in August over in Ireland. But this whole thing allows the subconscious to start talking back with you. So you have this conversation with the conscious and subconscious, backwards and forwards, and that's when you start realizing you can be helped. Jung called it the numinous, the beings that live between the worlds. And he started discovering that when he was crossing the abyss, that this zone of darkness, the waters, the oceans, I mean, even the Egyptians talk about this whole thing, this journey across to the other world as being the ocean, and the abyss, and a lot of different words of being the same thing, as being an area where we're challenged. And Jung was mercilessly challenged. And we are finding today people who are slightly more advanced or sensitive are being really challenged by the world environment right now. They're seeing things which should be unseen, but to them they're seeing. Their perceptions of reality are already being opened up. And I know from friends who are psychiatrists that the mental wards are just full up with people who are just not prepared for some of the things that's going to happen, and they're coming along with whole lists of what they say is, but they can see and feel, and the medical fraternity don't know what to begin to do about this. But what it really should be told is that, look, this is humanity undergoing a transformation of consciousness. It's an evolution of consciousness, and there's a science behind it that explains it.
So thank you so much for bringing up the event and just setting it up in this way. I know that we were having this conversation about how powerful it is when groups of people come together, and particularly what I've found so interesting. Rory was introduced to me through a friend years ago, and it was because I was working on this one dragon line in the United States. It ran across from the west to the east, in California, Northern California-ish, all the way to the East Coast. And, this woman introduced me to Rory's work. And ever since then, it's been such an interesting cross, because I know you work with kind of a lot of mediums and psychics and more spiritual grid workers, but you're really coming from it, from this scientific background. But, obviously you're so grounded in your spirituality, and you're open and so aware of the spiritual aspects of this. But there are, people that, like you say, they are more sensitive to the earth energies. I believe that there are people on earth right now whose role, I call them the grid workers, or energy healers or empaths, like these subtle beings are here to almost be anchors, or I feel like they're acupuncture needles on the earth that are here to support the transduction of the cosmic energies and the activation of the earth energies. And you often talk about how so many psychics just feel so validated by your work because you're like, oh, Rory, I feel this energy here. And you're like, oh, yeah, I measured a line there. And there's this beautiful synchrony in this work together. So, we've kind of been emailing back and forth about some of these discoveries that I've found over the years. And one thing that really drew me to your work was the dragons. And something that is so profound, every time you talk about the core of the earth, my whole body just starts vibrating, because you guys know we've been working with this thing that we call the Templar chamber in the center core of the earth. And it's been bringing through this new consciousness, this new template. It's activating human DNA in this way. And then Rory started telling me about, quantum gravity or something, about how these ley lines actually are subatomic vibrations that are coming from the core of the earth that are kind of giving birth to these massive lines, and they're activated by, as you say, even cosmic energy that is impacting the lines changing. So this is really cool. I would love to hear more about that, but just before we dive into that, Rory and I are facilitating this incredible group event in Ireland over the 8/8 portal this year. It is a 4-day event. The link is in the description, and my team is going to put it in the chat here as well. I'll just do it actually, so it goes on to Facebook as well. But essentially, our goal for this event is to bring in like the highly templated grid workers who are working with not only, energy, but like we're really tapped into prophecy, are tapped into this highest prophecy for the arrival of this new earth, heaven on earth. You're coded with that vibration of heaven in your heart and in your body, because I believe this frequency of heaven, certain beings are born on this earth with this pure love, pure peace. And this is really what we are in training into the earth. And when we come together to do this, it is so powerful. And so, yeah, like part of this is really, this is the new consciousness. Like the reason why the dragons are so big, for me, it feels like they're carrier waves of this higher consciousness. And the ley lines to me feel like a architecture is like all human beings are receiving and breathing in this energy all the time. So many things like wars and military bases and things have been built on these ley line places to control human consciousness, right? But then, as this ley line system, this new line system that's coming online, we're going to hear about shortly, it's bigger. It's much bigger than any ley line system that's ever been discovered, right? And so it's basically coming online and overriding and becoming the new song that's being sung, the new grounded foundation that eventually all human beings will just entrain to, because it's like a frequency. It's like being inside of a soup and you're constantly breathing in this energy. Of course, every human being is going to start to wake up as this, new ley line system is activating. So I've been receiving that this system started coming on in 2017. That's when I started working on the system. I think that's when you discovered them. And then I've been getting this message about how this dragon year is really the year when these lines are going to come online fully. And you were telling me that you had calculated like the width of the lines or something that leads to it pointing at that this year is monumental to the activation of these lines. So yeah, if you guys want to participate in this event and come together and be in this energy and just, be in the heart field, when we talk about doing group events, this is really something that I've been training in for many years. Having that group field, we have a cacao ceremony that we're going to do. We're going to have a sound healing ceremony we're going to do that prepares us for this third day when we're going to go to the earth. So by the time we go to the sacred site, we will have already experience, just being together for a couple days. And we're also going to have like this, it was kind of my heart's dream to just have a fairy ball where we all dress up, and just have a blast, to celebrate the work that we do together. So it's going to be really beautiful. And I just invite you to join this event. The link is in the description. Oh, and also we created a second group for the Sacred Sites Tour because it sold out like really fast. And then we had people ask if they can still get a ticket. So right now we're working on creating a second group. So basically there'll be like a 2-day break for some of you to go on this 3-day Sacred Sites Tour, but I've opened up more tickets for that with this incredible local Irish man as well, who was actually an archaeologist turned sacred sites keeper. So beautiful to see these beautiful guardians, sacred masculine, tending to the land in this beautiful way. And he's going to be taking us on this Sacred Sites Tour. So check that out. So coming back to our conversation, Rory, please tell us about quantum gravity and how this is related to the dragons, and then how you discovered the dragons and what they mean for the future of humanity.
Yeah, I'd like to, but just if I might mention one thing about your event, that the place you've chosen for this is right next to one of the most significant Type 4 energy lines that runs and joins up Newgrange, the Hill of Tara, right the way down to Knockdrum, all the way up to sites I know into Edinburgh. The fact that you didn't know that, and your organizers didn't know that when you chose that site, we're literally 300 meters away from a powerful node. So it just shows how important and significant this now is with that kind of synchronicity. So if you with all the people that are coming, it's gonna make magic. I'm absolutely sure of it. So I'm really excited to come along to that, and we'll have a good chance to chat and meet people there as well, which is good because I'm looking forward to that. But coming back to your question on the Emperor Dragons and what really started it was again when you got involved in 2017 was exactly the moment when everything kind of like switched on. It was I work with a few people and I got an email from one of them and they said, "Have you seen the lines?" And I'm thinking today, and no. So I checked them and they'd all doubled in their width. I thought, what's going on? And I sent a message out to several others. Can you just check the lines and tell me what you find? Sure enough, they doubled in their width. Other people found it, and it's been growing from a Type 4 line being about 30 paces wide. It's now about 130 paces wide. The Emperor Dragons had arrived, and we knew there were 3 of them going around the world, but we found another 3 had arrived. And you've got to ask, well, what is the source of the energy that keeps this line where it is, and why does it move from side to side? And it does all come down to cosmic energy hitting our atmosphere, but managing to get through these interstellar magnetic fields, hitting our Earth's atmosphere, splitting into neutrinos, gamma ray radiation. Neutrinos run straight through the center of the Earth, imparting energy to the iron nickel inner core, which acts like a transducer. Out it comes to the surface again, and that's what expands all the lines. But it wasn't just the width of the lines increasing. And you mentioned quantum gravity. Well, the Pearson science all starts at the subquantum level, where vibrations are what causes all things. And there's an intelligence to that, which I can't go into here and how that arises. But basically, vibration creates the larger quantum world, which is light, electromagnetics. And then you have the illusory world of matter. This is precisely what Nikola Tesla talked about. Vibration creates light, creates matter. So we know that these vibrations that we have, these very, very low frequency in the microhertz range, have the greatest connection to source consciousness as you can possibly find, which is why when you meditate on the intersections, you are that much closer to connecting with source consciousness. But this vibration, this growing in the width, Not only that happened, but we found that the energy formations at these intersections at the 4 times of the year, the day before the solstice and the equinoxes, that would last about half a day, 3/4 of a day. But since 2017, it started getting longer and longer and longer. And we could extrapolate this out from 3 days to 6 days, to 9 days to 12. We're now about 48, 50 days long. And by this winter solstice this year, it's going to be all year round. So that's one vibration. It's like one sound dominating over all other sounds. And we're in this one vibration. And you say, yeah, all humanity are going to be awakening. Well, this is bigger than just humanity in our world. It's all the beings on all the worlds, but it's bigger than that. It's the planet itself. When you think about the underlying geometric form that goes into designing all crystals, because basically all matter is based on some kind of crystalline structure. We're moving to total symmetry. The whole world is changing. Our perception of it is changing, and it's what we then go into experiencing, and what we can do and what we can feel that's the transition we're going through. And the science is behind it, but you're looking at this is a monumental year, because we're going into complete all year round harmony, when before all the energy lines have moved from side to side at different times. So what does that mean, and how long it'll last? Well, we've linked it to the most likely thing, which has the same sort of cycles, is the solar system passing through the galactic current sheet roughly every 12,000 years, just as the Earth passes through the sun's current sheet roughly every 8 to 10 days. And going through the current sheet is going to last 200 years plus, maybe 300. And all that time is going to give us a really good chance of learning this new environment and being able to connect to source conscious in such a better way. But it also means that all the other beings, our ancestors, the higher beings, are finding it easier to help us. This is the journey. The real gift and understanding of life is all about growth and learning. And so you've got the higher beings who are helping us through this. It's not a journey we're going on our own. And that is the fascinating thing now, because we're getting that help and we're sensing that help. But we can't do nothing. We have to come together, meditate in groups, listen, learn, and help others to do the same. And that's literally what we have to do. And there's a few other things. This purification event, the light frequencies we're getting now, they're activating us. But why wouldn't they? Because cosmic energy is mutational. It's evolutionary. We've seen that through the geological record. What boosts of cosmic rays do? They cause evolutionary change on Earth, and we're going through another evolutionary change. So it's really exciting times, and although it's nice to have the science behind it to explain it, we need to be participants, and that's the role right now, to really awaken people, and it's a really good time to do this, because as you mentioned, there's a lot of darkness around. There's a lot of global domination desire from a few people, which is going to try and install this top-down approach on everybody to pretty much stop us taking advantage of this natural heritage of this evolution of consciousness, which comes around roughly every 12,500 years probably. But I don't believe it can be stopped. These dragon energies have come from long distances. They're there. They'll always be there. But they're growing in power. The magnetic fields are going down. It can't stop. You just can't stop it. It's coming through, and people are being switched on. But as I said, it can still go two ways. If we do nothing, then this same evolutionary effect will have a different sort of outcome, if you like. And it can be traced a little bit back to astrology, what we can learn from that. We're moving into Aquarius, which is very expansive, airy, free, bit chaotic. But opposite that is a more controlling Leo. And it's all about how mankind moves in this chaotic environment, and who is doing the control, whether it's a top-down control, centralized, or whether it's decentralized in communities and groups. And I think it's an opportunity for group development, community development, through spiritual unity, through group meditation on sacred sites. And if you have groups working on sacred sites along the lines within a country like Ireland, you're bringing the energy through. And the grid workers you're talking about are here to do just that. You talk about a needle and acupuncture. Well, there's precedent for that in the records. You know, there's old legends that talk about it talks about a golden needle, a golden ray of light coming down through us into the earth, pinning the serpent to the earth with a golden nail. They talk about that, and this is exactly the visualization you have when you're taking that golden light down through your crown chakra. You know all this anyway, down to the center of the earth, and then up to connect to the upper sun. So you're connecting the upper sun with the lower sun, and you do that in groups, and the magic begins. You move from consciousness to into your aware state in the subconscious, and soon the dialogue occurs, just like Jung had the dialogue, Steiner had that dialogue, and that intuition, the prophecy, we know it works. This is how we can do it, and we're being guided, and it's a beautiful time to be participatory in these things. And I talk too much.
No, we're just I think we're just all fascinated and just totally engrossed. And you have such a beautiful way of speaking and of just your way of being, and you're so beloved in the community. And we're just so grateful to have you here today and to receive your wisdom. It's almost like listening to your grandfather tell a beautiful story. I'm just kind of like engrossed in what you're saying. So thank you so much. So people that are wondering, the map and the locations of these lines, we will be discussing some of this in Ireland, but if you are looking for more resources, Rory has a lot of books available, particularly this one called A Guide to Ley Lines, Earth Energy Lines, Nodes, and Large Vortexes. It's like a little handbook. It's really handy. You can find it on Amazon. He's also got a whole bunch of other books you can find on his website at roryduff.com. So I would love to talk more about your work with groups, as I understand this is kind of your primary work right now. Can you tell us more about, what happens when groups of people come together? Why is that significant? And more about, just the work that you're doing on that right now.
Yeah. I guess I'd like to start with a bit of synchronicity again. When I came across Carl Jung's Red Book, I mean, I wasn't expecting to come across it. I was looking for a lead for my projector in the Theosophical Society buildings in Bristol. But out came this, what shouldn't have been in there. It's in a brown cardboard box, a very big, large sort of A2 size. And I opened it up and immediately just had a look at this. And what is going on here? This is a picture of a node, and then the waters and the streams, all the symbols that I've been aware of. It was diving into the Red Book with his images that I began to realize that I was limited in understanding this. So I did an exercise with a group of people, with an audience of about 30, 40 people, and I took them through the images and I said, what do you see? And then go into this aware moment, what comes through for you? And I began to realize how it's almost impossible thinking that you can understand something on your own anymore. You have a two-dimensional potential with just reading a book or listening to music or looking at a massively creative painting. When you get a group of people who have different preferred submodalities, some have more kinesthetic, some more visual, some more auditory, you get this unbelievable sort of three-dimensional view of what the artist was conveying, probably more than the artist in the first place even gathered. And then you go into this, what I call the insights on insights exercise, when you ask them to get out of themselves and go into their awareness whilst looking at this painting or drawing or music or someone talking, and share the insights that come through after that. When you start doing that, and you find that maybe in a group of 4, 5, 6 people, you get several people coming through with a similar insight. You think, now we're learning things which you can't do on your own at all. You're getting confirmation that what might have come through from you has come through from somebody else. This is the same as meditation in groups. You get connect. In fact, strangely enough, we remotely do this as well. And you mentioned about the Templar sphere. We also remotely meet in the center of the earth. A lot of groups do, because of that potentiality down there. But when you've got 4 or 5 people in the group who each come through with something which is absolutely connected, which is totally connected from the subconscious, that defeats all bounds of probability. It just doesn't happen to have all people coming with the same connection. Then you know that you're being given something which is really valid in regards to the true nature of reality, and possibly to the direction the group should go on. So you can get guided by the numinous, as Jung calls them. So the big thing that came out of this was that we should be working in groups. But this is nothing new. I mean, the Hopi Indians, for instance, every morning they would come together and share their dreams. And being in a dream group is just incredible. You can get events in dreams, and then in hours later in the day, which are synchronistically connected. So the synchronicity occurs between different groups of people within groups and dream groups, meditation groups, and working groups. So the whole thing was pointed, well, we need to come together in groups. And at that point in time, I was realizing that this return to group consciousness was embedded within our psyche. It as this reoccurring story. We've been through it before. It's a cyclic thing. Mankind's been through it before, and it's represented in our legends and our stories as a particular event. And because it's cyclic, it fits the long-term prophecy rules. And we were getting clues from all around the world, in Japan, in India, in Peru, in Mexico, in America, and other places, which was snippets of this event in group consciousness, which is what we're heading through, this evolution of consciousness. And yet we're getting that in different amounts in different ways. And one of the things I talk about in the description of my talk that I'm going to be doing for your group and your audience in Dublin is the fourth ascent, and why and how we're in the fourth ascent right now. And I know it's purposely slightly enigmatic why, but it's linked to Black Elk's great vision. The Oglala Indian who had an incredible life, and this great vision, and he became a medicine man and looked after his tribe and things. And he's pieced together this information, and it's all about these four ascents. And this vision was really important in his lifetime. They helped him and his group. But it has a further deeper understanding. The symbolism within it is about group meditation. And in the final ascent, up to the point where the flowering stick becomes the tree of life in the hoop. And then all sorts of things kick off, and that is where we're heading. And it's beautiful to see all these these universal prophecies come together. Because you can begin to get a three-dimensional understanding of where we're heading. And that's important because we need to have as much information as we can to prepare ourselves. And you can see how, just as Black Elk was being helped by the six grandfathers, the higher beings, and you find this being mirrored in stories around the world as well, about how we're being helped from the higher beings. And what we're going through now, in fact, what we're thinking, even our thoughts now, you start to wonder, just like Jung, he started to wonder whether it was ever his thinking in the first place. Was it what was? Did I have an original thought in my life? I begin to think, are all the original thoughts just been given to me? That's the kind of point you get to, because we were being seeded, we're being helped, and then of course you begin to realize, well, actually we're all part of the same oneness and the unity consciousness that we're all returning to, which is like, full symmetry for the earth, and it's that journey we're on. Goodness, I ramble on a bit, but what was the question again?
Man, I just love that so much because, we talk a lot about just the state of innocence and awe we can get into. And I think this ties into the next and final subject we wanted to get into, because we're kind of 15 minutes to that hour mark today. Again, thank you so much for your time and for being here with us. You're such a beloved speaker to our family. This idea to, a lot of people are asking about, like, how can we learn how to dowse for lines and know what's going on our own properties, because a lot of what this community is being called into is also stewarding specific properties and lands, right? And so for me, I know a lot of land has called to me, and I travel and I work on, different places in the world, but then also I get called to specific locations that call to me to become a steward of a specific place. And it really feels like, to me, it feels like, sacred site conservation almost, because this property that I recently found, was almost developed into like an Airbnb compound, but then the earth was like, oh, heck no, just kind of kicked them out. It's really fun to see the earth starting to do things like that. But, once we do find these lands, like, what do we do next? Like, how do we dowse for these lines, and how can we learn more about that? And just one thing that I wanted to share around that is like this understanding that we're really tapping into the earth's collective consciousness and understanding that we're part of this web of life. And what I find so interesting is that, many people talk about the theta brainwave state and how we can get into this quantum, hypnotic place where we could get access to downloads and information in our past lives and almost tune into the universal Akashic library. And, that same frequency just happened to be the Earth's Schumann resonance as well. And so really our access to the records, to information, it happens when we almost surrender our individuality in a way, surrender like ourself, and just come into this deep state of innocence and curiosity and awe to just get to witness miracles. Like, I feel like the more that we're able to work on really getting motivated by the service, motivated by the love, motivated by just like how beautiful and miraculous it is to get to be alive on this earth, more so than, being known or being seen or being the one that gets to do something or having ownership over information that we get. That's like the magic place where we really tap into group consciousness or unity consciousness or the collective consciousness. Because honestly, like, I don't feel like we own anything, right? Sometimes people like to trademark stuff, like trademark like ley line this or like mother father god. Like, it's like, how can we trademark stuff like that when we're just so blessed to be given an opportunity to be aware of it and to even get to see it? Like, that is just so precious of an experience to have. And so for me, that is literally the easiest way to tap into the earth consciousness, because, how can we get the earth and the dragons to trust you, right? How can we be worthy? Sometimes people are like, see, I feel unworthy to do this work. Well, if you feel unworthy, then just be a trustworthy person. And how do you do that? Well, you get into this place of curiosity and, almost like giving up your self motivations and just be there to generously give, your energy. One of my favorite things that I've ever heard Rory say is this concept that, in the coming years, you're either going to be someone that can help or you're going to be somebody that needs help. And I just thought that was such a funny way, but a really succinct way to put it. And the way that we can really support is just really tapping into that stream of almost like selflessness or a pure motivation and innocence to just be with the earth, to support the earth. And from that innocence, we open up this ability to hear the earth and what the earth is trying to communicate, and that we become this dowsing rod. So on that note, I pass it to you, Rory. Tell us more about, we're looking for a property. Maybe we haven't found this land, but we feel called to be a steward of earth. How can we douse? And, what's your perspective on that?
Yeah, and you're absolutely right about getting out the way and all that. But this is really a form of communication. This is not just getting out the way and listening. It's like switching backwards and forwards. You go from conscious to subconscious, conscious to subconscious. It is a conversation. You ask the question, you get out of the way, you listen. You maybe get an answer. You're lucky to get an answer. Sometimes you don't. But the recognition is you don't learn from somebody else. The Gnostics in the Garden of Eden, the instructor, the teacher is the serpent. The serpent is synonymous with the energy lines. The energy lines teach us. At the nodes, these are the distant learning schools. These are where we're taught. So if you go to these nodes and just ask the question and get out the way, show me what I need to do. Show me what I need to learn next. And getting out the way is hard because you need the curiosity in the first place. But if you have any curiosity after you've got out of the way, your ego's still in there. If you have any desire to know the answer when you've asked the question, your ego's still in there. You have to build huge intent and willpower and then give it up. Don't care. You've asked the question. They can hear you. Just be happy to get given whatever you get given. And you might not get given anything. And you even might get given a lesson, which isn't very nice. But they're testing you. And you ask quite rightly how about trust. Well, they won't trust you. That's why it's so difficult going through the abyss. They will test you. They don't trust you at all. They need you to respond and become respectful, basically, and to be happy to get something. And the more you do this, the more you might just get a little extra grain of what you need to do in your life, in your journey. But yeah, the teacher comes. If you go to the energy lines, if you work in a group, ask questions, humility, get your curiosity out the way, don't care, get your will out the way, and then be in that receptive mode. And just if you're lucky, you'll get something. And it's practice. And when you get something, you'll be thrown out of that aware state. They'll throw you back into the conscious state just so you can make a note, so you can think about it and ask another question. And before long, you ask that question, you get an answer before you finish the question. That's the really weird thing. Before you've even finished the question, and then you're getting the subconscious telling you things. What the heck? I mean, I did a house. There was a couple of ladies who had a problem with the house. The bank grid intersections were three of them in the same house. It's a very dense grid, and I couldn't move them. I couldn't expand them because they were in a terraced group of houses, and moving them would affect everybody else in the row. And I said, look, there's nothing I can do. I'm sorry. I know it's affecting your health, so the best thing you can do is to probably look to sell the house and find somewhere else. And the next day they rang me up and said, can you think of anything? And I said, well, I could try asking elemental, a local elemental. And I did. And the really weird thing was the elemental said, yeah, they can do it. And yet the answer came straight to me from them, but just for 5 months. And I'm thinking, where did that come from? 5 months. And before I knew it, I'd said why. And having said why, I am completely confused. I got this word flash into my head, timelines. What? So I'm now thinking, moving the banker grid is affecting the timelines. That went on to a whole new ways of understanding about the banker grid. But the point was, it was like a totally unexpected answer, didn't understand it. And then you begin to realize this is how Jung was getting his unexpected answers and realizing he was talking to real beings. Philemon, who he came to regard as his master, his teacher, was this incredible avuncular, uncle-like being with great kingfisher wings who he would talk to and converse for hours and learn so much about reality from him, who was talking about his own evolution from to another character called Farnes, who's a keeper of the four rivers. But we have this capacity to enter into this dialogue. So dowsing is that. It's a step in towards mediumship, but it's mediumship where you need to gain understanding, because if you don't learn from what they're teaching you, it's pointless, because the whole purpose is to learn and develop and grow. And you quite often find people talking about their gardener. We're the flowers, they're the gardener, and they're trying to help us grow. So treat the energies as your teacher. Ask questions, be humble. We have a signaling system with a rod. That's just no. If the rod moves like that, it's a yes, and that's a very basic. But after a while, you're having a dialogue, and that's when you realize this is why some people get locked up, because they tell other people they're having the dialogue with these spirits, and the medicine men think, oh, crikey, put him in a hospital pretty quickly. Well, they're just denying it because their science can't explain it. But when you start reading the likes of Jung, who spent years doing this, no wonder he didn't tell anyone till the Red Book didn't get published until 2009, which was well after his death, because he didn't want his whole legacy of psychoanalytical work to go up in smoke. But when you see someone like Jung and of course Steiner and lots of others like Goethe have spent years studying this and realized this huge potentiality, well, I had to sort of just think, well, I can't do anything on my own anymore. I have to work in groups, and groups became this fascination about what a group could do. And I've run 3 groups now for 3 years through these modules I've been putting together, and I'll be finishing them completely this year, but so that anyone can become a facilitator and run the modules and start groups. But it takes you through all the universal prophecies and symbolism, synchronicity, all of Jung's work, Steiner's work, Goethe's work, and it's all done with open questions. So the group itself finds the answers, and in finding the answers, they find one really important thing: the necessary individuality, the individual sovereignty of a person within the group. It's no point everyone being the same. You have to respect how everyone is so uniquely different, because that way they bring something to the table for the group. And you kind of like get to know people's strengths. But the beauty of knowing people's strengths is like that holds up a mirror to you. Just like in the prophecies, you're looking into the mirror to see who you really are, to know yourself, because you see all the other people's strengths is your weakness. And you find your weaknesses out and you want to become better at something because you see other people are different. So it's a beautiful way of self-development when you see how weak you are for yourself, as opposed to being told, because you see how other people are really good. And they look at you with your perspective, because it's not the same as them. So when you see all these different individual perspectives coming together and working together, there are no boundaries, but no one's trying to change anybody, because they want you to be the same, because you offer the group so much more with your individual sovereignty. And I find that's a fascinating journey. And no one group is the same. And no, you don't come up with the same answers. And that's the beauty of this whole game, is that we'll never find out what we need to do unless we get over our differences and learn to work with each other. It's like that fail-safe that God, if you like, put together. The evolution of consciousness will not happen if we just keep being diversive and individual, or if we all start becoming homuncular and all the same sort of thing. So
I want to swivel back.
I'm very much.
Sorry, I want to swivel back to what you were saying about timelines just quickly, because my jaw just about hit the floor. Because you know that, I mean, a lot of this stuff, I just write down what comes through, right? I just, say like, oh, we're doing timeline work. And I'm like, okay, how does it work? It doesn't really matter. I just show up and I do what, comes through. But it's such an incredible idea to consider, because, I really do feel like, there, as you mentioned, there's some beings that are really trying to hijack this organic timeline. Like if these beings weren't here doing their little weird things with, the chemical warfare and the wars and just orchestrating these events, like the earth and humanity would be on this very accelerated ascension timeline. And they're meddling with it. They're trying to slow it down. Of course, they can't really do, because we say that there's a timeline war, but humanity and the light workers, we're not really at war. God isn't really at war. These beings are the ones that are at war, but they're trying to fight God. And so it's kind of silly, but it's also just really devastating, the kind of...
It is, but don't worry about it, because you see, we can only get in the way.
Yes.
We know what to do. We've been told what to do and how to do it. We just don't know when. But if you surrender to this ego and think, oh, we'll just do it now, and we'll collapse the grid, or we'll expand the grid now, and we'll do this, and that'll stop this, and that'll let it happen. Yeah, we know how to do this, but we might completely screw up the whole grand design that's unfolding right now, unless we do it in a coordinated way through intuition and insight that we're given, that we can realize, that's now obviously triggered something, and we should investigate that and to do that. And the good news is that we're pretty bad at cottoning on, so they tend to knock you on the head several times to really get the message through. So you don't miss the deadline. So, but yeah, timeline is sorry, go on.
I just think it's so incredible, because I feel like there are some people here that are coded with this highest timeline. Like this is the prophecy that we're talking about, right? The arrival of heaven on earth. And I think that there are people here right now that literally has the spiritual awareness and like a literal genetic blueprint. They have this imprint of this highest timeline inside of their bodies. It's like they remember it. And a lot of these starseeds are angelics. It's really tricky for these people to be on earth, because they're confused why people are mean to each other. They're like, they come from this other world. And so I think this is so important. Like that's why these are the specific people that I'm really calling together, and the earth is calling together, because we have this ability to come into unity and unity consciousness in such a greater velocity. And if we come together with this intention of literally seeding this memory, this remembrance of this highest timeline, the heaven on earth, Edenic blueprints, if we come together to activate that inside of us and seed it into the earth, we really do have this ability to literally allow that to be the codes that are running through the dragons to concretize this timeline.
Absolutely, and there are two people in a group, in group meditation. We all have functions, and we're learning about the functions. But two people in the group are there specifically to expand and contract the banker grids at the right time intuitively, and it actually stems back to Egyptian times, where the problems began, and how things weren't rectified when they should, and there's 2 or 3 groups that I'm working with now that are on the case. We've been studying it for the last since it's actually last September, or was it? We've nearly been doing it for a year, but we've had special trips to Rome and Egypt, and people are carrying things out, hopefully intuitively and synchronistically. But grid workers, they will be doing that, without a shadow of doubt. It's all happening, but we've just got to bring people together. The knowledge will be shared. We'll be taught what we're supposed to be doing finally by the serpent energies. That's the instructor. So I'm quite confident that we're heading the right way, really.
Man, I feel like that could be like, I feel like I can just talk to you for like hours and hours, because that's like a whole can of worms. But
we'll talk in Ireland. We've got plenty of time.
Right. So we will be together in Ireland. I was so excited to meet you. For those of you that can't make it to Ireland, we will be live streaming this event. So if you go on the event page, there is a virtual ticket available that you can acquire as well. It's really beautiful. A lot of these times we only have these grid work events in virtually, and that's so cool to have, literally hundreds of people around the world at the same time at their local spots sharing in the same meditation together. That is something the internet is making possible, and I'm a huge fan of that phenomenon. But anyway, come join us in Ireland. We really try to make this event as affordable for everyone as possible. earthstar.academy/EA888. Please note the dates on the Sacred Sites Tour, as there's a 2-day gap because we're opening up a second group due to the amounts of requests we've gotten and desire to join, because that's when we're going to be in a smaller group, being out in these smaller stone circles and locations. And so, yeah, a lot of people are like, oh, I wish this conversation will keep going. But in completion, is there anything else you'd like to share with the audience before we just hop off for the day?
The one thing I think that we're being tested upon this year is moving from negativity to positivity. We're being given, for instance, despair in order to feel positively, expectation with high hope. I think in the summer we're going to be given sorrow and sadness in order for us to really bring through from within the joy. And leading up to the end of the year, it'll be a surrounding a resentment and anger in the world, and that will challenge us to bring forth the love. And if you're doing the opposite of what's around you and balancing that out with bringing the positive, that one thing will do more for you than perhaps anything else. So that I would like to put that message out. That would make a difference, huge. And if what change you do yourself, that will influence change in the world.
I love that so much. Thank you so much for being here with us today. You guys can find his work at roryduff.com. He's working on an amazing project right now, the Sacred Network. Actually, can you quickly tell us a little bit about the Sacred Network and, what it is and how that's going?
Yeah, it's a website that's designed to help people find groups, join groups, start groups, specifically meditation online or on site. And there's a sites map there which is linked to finding sacred sites near to where you are. There's about 260 sites on there at the moment. There's probably another 200 I could put on, but it's finding the time to do that. But they will get on of it at some point. But it's there to help people come together in groups. That's basically it. Yeah. And we're work in progress on it. We've got some more developments we're wanting to bring through. Thank you.
This is so weird. I just tried to send the link to you guys, and it got sent on YouTube, but on Facebook it says this link failed to post because it's against our community standards.
Oh, it could be because the site is completely encrypted on blockchain. So search engines can't send their cookies into it to try and to try and find out what's going on. so it's sacrednetwork.org. But we wanted it encrypted. Well, it just happened that a lovely gentleman called Will was able to offer some space on his servers, the Edge network, which is an encrypted web server network, which is great because it means that not even the CIA can get in.
Wow, that's incredible. I'm a huge fan of that. I'd love to talk even more about that as well in the future, but thank you so much for your time today. We're so excited to see you in Ireland and moving forward. And I'm just sending you so much love and appreciation for all the amazing work that you do. And for everybody else, I love you guys so much. Hope to see you soon, and bye for now. Bye, everybody.